Hi everyone, it's Hannah from Hand Done Crochet, and today we are making these super simple crochet hats together. Now these hats come in sizes baby through to extra large adult, and I'll put in the description below the links for where you can find the pattern either on the blog or as a PDF in my stores. And you'll also find in the description the links and the information that you'll need for the materials, but we will go through them now just so you know what to grab before we get going. To make the hat, I chose to use Amigo from Hobie, which is 100% acrylic, and it's a category 3 weight yarn. It's a really lovely acrylic to work with, and it comes in lots of lovely colours as I'm showing you here. And you get, she says, looking at the thing, here we are, 175 meters, and that's 191 yards in 50 grams. And you really don't need much of this yarn. You just need 1 or 2 balls to make each of the sizes of these hats. But as I say, all the information for that is in the description below. You'll also need a 4mm crochet hook, or the hook that matches the gauge for you. And then you'll need a pair of scissors, a needle for your ends, and a stitch marker. Now I have a part made hat here to show you just how easy this construction is. We're going to begin with the bottom band that we have here, and we work single crochet in the back loop only for a number of rounds, so that creates our bottom rib for us. Then we have the main stitch of the pattern that we work in rounds, and it's a 6-round repeat that then moves the texture for us. If you look at it, it's meant to be nice and subtle, but if you look really carefully, it shifts as we go. This is just using half double crochet stitches, and it gives the most beautiful texture and the most lovely drape. And then when we've got to this point of the hat for this size, but at various points for different sizes, we then close for the top, and we do this by gently decreasing over 5 to 7 rounds of the top here. It's all detailed within the pattern for the different sizes. So that we then come to a close, and then you can leave it as it is, or you can add a pom-pom if you'd like as well. I think I will add pom-poms to some and not to others, depending on whether my children want them or not. I always ask nowadays because, you know, you can easily get it wrong. So I am going to be working on this size in the tutorial, which is the toddler size. We'll begin the band together, and then I will show you the stitch repeat, and then we will decrease. But the principle is exactly the same for all of the sizes. So if we work this one together, you'll be able to apply all of the things that we do to whichever size you decide to make from the pattern. To begin the toddler size hat, we are going to need to make some foundation single crochet stitches, and this is true for whichever size you are making. They all begin with a certain number of foundation single crochet stitches. So find the number that you need to make for the size you're making, and then put a slip knot on the hook. I want to make sure I'm not leaning over the top of that to make it tricky for you to see. And then we begin with a chain 2. And then working back into the first chain, so the second chain from the hook, the first chain that we made, we're going to work into that back bump there. We're going to insert our hook, we yarn over, we pull through. So now we yarn over and pull through 1 to create an extra chain for us for the next stitch, and then we yarn over and we pull through 2. And that is our first single crochet, our foundation single crochet made. The next one that we work is going to go into that chain that we made, so into this part of the stitch here, and we want to go through that part and then make sure that the V lays across your hook. So you want to make sure you go through both parts of that stitch there. Then we yarn over and we pull through, we yarn over and pull through 1, and we yarn over and pull through 2, and that's our second stitch made. So now we see here's our next chain that we made for our next stitch. So you go through to make sure that you have both of these loops there, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 1, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And that's all there is to it for our foundation single crochets. We're going to carry on making as many as you need. For the size I'm making, I need to work 66. So I'll work those 66, and then I'll come back to you and I'll show how we begin to start working in rounds. Now here I have the 66 stitches that I need for this size, and I'm just going to run my fingers along to make sure that it's nice and straight. because now what we need to do is find our first stitch again, and we're going to now begin working in rounds, and we're going to work into the back loop only of this first stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet into there. We're going to work in continuous rounds now, so we don't need to join anything, and that's our first stitch of our next round. And I just want to put a single crochet in the back loop of the next one before I do anything, because I don't want it flopping around. So we now need to grab our stitch marker and mark that first stitch of the round that we just made there. So pop that stitch marker in there, and we'll know that that's where we're heading to when we come back. Now when you're ready to weave in your ends, this is going to join here. This end is going to go into this last stitch that we made there. So I'm just going to pull it through at the moment now to stop it flapping around everywhere. And that is how the bottom of our hat will sit. So now for the rest of the brim of the hat, for whichever size you're making, we just work a certain number of rounds of single crochet in the back loop only. So we have our front loop and we have our back loop, and we're just going to work into that back loop only of each of the stitches around. For the size I'm making, it's 5 rounds. So go ahead and work however many it says for the size that you're making, and then meet me back and we will start our main stitch pattern together. Now I know I said 5 rounds for this size of this rib section here, but actually you don't need to see me do all of that. We can skip to, just imagine I've done the 5 rounds here, and they will be there in person on the real version, I promise. I'm going to actually skip straight to the main body stitch for the hat now and show you how that works. So once you're ready, once you've got your rib section done, we now need to start working using half double crochet stitches. And for the first round, for all the sizes, we are going to be working a half double crochet, working continuous rounds. So I've finished my last stitch there of the last round, and now I'm going to work a half double crochet stitch in the back loop only of each of the stitches around. So very similar to the last round that you've just done, you're just going to switch a single crochet to a half double crochet for this round. So make sure to move your stitch marker so that you know where the beginning of your round is. So work all the way around with these half double crochet stitches in the back loop only. So here we are back at the start, and for round 2 of the main body stitch, we are going to be using all the loops that we have on offer of our half double crochet stitch, and we're going to be using them in different orders. So we have, let's first of all look at them. Let's look at what we've got here. So when we're working in rounds, we've always got the right side of our work facing us. So this mysterious extra loop, this third loop that we have on a half double crochet, has been created right here at the back. So that's our third loop that we have there, the furthest one away from you. Then we have our back loop, which sits at the top here. And then we have our front loop, which is the one right in front of us. Now, if we were working in rows, it would be different because we would have flipped around and our third loop would be facing us instead. So when we're working in rounds like this, we have the third loop is furthest, the top loop here is the back loop, and then the one closest to us is the front loop. And we're going to be using them in sequence. So for this next round, I'm going to work into the third loop of that first stitch, into the back loop of the next stitch, and then into the front loop of the next stitch. So that now becomes our sequence for that round. I'm going to move my stitch marker and then we'll go over it again. That's my first stitch there. Oh, such concentration to do that. Oh dear. There we go. We're now going to work into the third loop of the next, the back loop of the next, and the front loop of the next. And that's all there is to it for that round. We go third loop, back loop, front loop, all the way around. For our next round, we are going to be working a half double crochet into the third loop of each stitch around. So go right over and find that third loop and then we're going to work a half double crochet in each of those. And what that does is it pushes that front and back loop forwards at us and gives us that lovely little rib at the front there. Remember to move your stitch marker, Hannah, before you get too far, otherwise you'll get lost. And so just work around with a half double crochet in that third loop. So here we are back at the beginning of the round, and the next round uses all of the loops again, but in a slightly different sequence. So before we started in the third loop, but for this one we're going to start in the back loop. So we go back loop and then front loop and then the third loop. Then make sure to move your stitch marker once you've done those first few stitches. And then the rest of that round continues in the same way by using the back loop, the front loop, and then the third loop. So back, oops, front, and third. So work all the way around until you get back to the beginning. And this is the start of the round again, and the next round is going to be that half double crochet in the third loop only. So every other round is going to be this one, so half double crochet in the third. So we then move our stitch marker, anybody who has watched my videos before will know that I have a bit of an aversion to stitch markers. However, on a pattern such as this, they are really, really useful. But please don't tell anyone I said that, because I've always had such an aversion to them. But please do use them. They really, really help. And if you don't, it is so easy to lose your place. So carry on with this round and then I'll meet you back. We have one last version of using all of the loops to work, and then you will know everything you need to know for the main section of the hat body. Right, so the last round that we need to learn is, you've probably guessed this already, we move our sequence one along again. So we are going to start with working in the front loop, which is where our stitch marker is there. So we work the front loop of that first stitch of the round, and then we work the third loop, and then we work the back loop. So we have front loop, third loop, and the back loop here. So that's now our sequence, sorry, can't say it, for this round. And that's all we now need to know for the main hat body section. We carry on working this with these three different versions, 1, 2, and 3 of the sequence that we work, and then they each have a round of half double crochet in the third loop only in between them. Now it's all detailed in the pattern as to how many rounds and how many repeats you need to do for the size you're making. But the good thing about this is that you can also just carry on, if you're fitting it to someone to size, carry on until you've got to the point where you would like to start curving and closing for the top. Now, as I say, most of them have between 5 and 7 rounds to close the top, so bear in mind that you will be adding a good little bit of height to the top of your hat once you've got to this point, but work up until either the pattern tells you to or wherever you would like it to be before you start to close to the top, and then come back to me and I will show you how we do that. Now I'm ready to start decreasing the top of this hat, and we're going to do that by working some half double crochet 2-togethers on the rounds that use the third loop only. So I've got to the point in the pattern where it says to stop and start doing the decrease, and the next round we'll be working in the third loop, of each of the stitches. And so what we do is we put a half double crochet in that very first stitch that we have there, and then we're going to half double crochet 2 together over the next 2. So we begin a half double crochet in that next stitch, and we don't finish it. We're going to begin another half double crochet in the next stitch along, and we pull our yarn through, and then we yarn over and pull through all of those, and that makes 2 of those stitches from the previous round into just 1 for this round. So now it's very important to put your stitch marker in here for that first stitch so that we know where we began. And then we do the same. We're going to work a half double crochet in that 3rd loop of the next, and then a half double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. And you repeat that around, with the caveat that for this size we just repeat that around, but for some of the sizes you will repeat it around for a certain number, and then at the end you may well just be working no decreases for the last few stitches, just to get that stitch count right for our next round, and all will become clear, hopefully. So do make sure that you check in the pattern, because if you do what I'm doing here for this size, for some of the other sizes it won't work. So make sure you check what you're going to be doing for the size that you're making. So then work this round and then come back to me and I'll show you what we do for the next. So when you've repeated that for the amount of times the pattern tells you, you may, as for this size, find that you need to work half double crochet in the 3rd loop only of a certain number at the end. Now for this size, it's a half double crochet in the last 3. But different sizes will do different things there, so just make sure you watch out to know how many decreases you do and then how many straight ones you do at the end, if any at all. So that gets us now down to another multiple of 3. So we can now start doing in the next round the pattern that is for the sequence that we have been working. So different hats will, different sizes, sorry, will finish at different points again. So we have done 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 1 here of that patterned row. So we're going to start working for this one in the 2nd version of that. So this will all make sense if you go to the written pattern as well. We're going to begin in the back loop for this patterned round here. So we're going to go back loop, front loop, and then 3rd loop here. So we then put your stitch marker in your first stitch, because obviously it's very difficult to explain for different sizes because there are so many variables here as to how many stitches you have and how many rounds you have, but it's all detailed within the pattern. So we go back loop, front loop, 3rd loop, but you may well be, if you're making a different size, doing a slightly different order there. Now we're back at the beginning of that round, and we now need to start another decrease round. Now for this size we just do a half double crochet in the next stitch and then half double crochet 2 together, and that's all in those 3rd loops. And that is our repeat for this next decrease round that we're working, but again it might be different for different sizes, so watch out in the pattern to tell you what to do for the one that you're making. But for this one, this is going to take us down from 45 stitches down to 30. So we go half double crochet in that 3rd and then half double crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches. So work that all the way around and then meet me back for the next round. Here we are back at the start, and we can see that it's starting to take that shape at the top there. And for our next patterned round, we are going to work in whichever sequence comes next for where you were at 2 rounds below here. So for me, that's going to work into the front loop to begin with. So I'm doing front loop, then the 3rd loop, then the back loop. So front loop, 3rd loop, and the back loop, but remember you may be using a different sequence depending on the size that you're making. So the stitch count stays the same again for this round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So work around in the sequence that you need to, and then we have just 2 more decrease rounds to go after this one. So our next decrease round is going to be just as we did before for this size. We're going to work a half double crochet in that third loop and then half double crochet 2 together. And just repeat that all the way around, and that will take our stitch count for this size down from 30 to 20. Now the final round that we have to work is half double crochet 2 together in the third loop only all the way around. So now we're going to half the number that we have on this final round. So we just do 2 together there and then 2 together over each of the sets that we come across on this round. So that for this size is going to take our countdown from 20 to 10. Then we get back to the beginning. It's time to break our yarn and give yourself a good length, especially if you're going to be adding a pom-pom on at the end there. And then we pull our yarn through that last stitch and you're ready to weave in this end. Now let's take the stitch marker out. And we're going to just scoop around the last round here. So do it as many times as you're then happy with the top of your hat. And then if you're adding a pom-pom, you can do that now. Or if you're leaving it as a plain top, then you can complete the weaving in of your end on the inside there and then break your yarn. I really hope you've enjoyed making this fun little hat with me. As I say, it comes in all the different sizes, so do make sure you go and find the pattern either on the blog or as a PDF in my stores, and you can make as many as you like. I cannot wait to see the versions that you make, so do come and find me on social media. I'm Hand Jam Crochet wherever you would expect to find me, and I really look forward to seeing you again soon.